We're live. Lisa, I'm delighted to have you with me. And here we are across the see, I can't do it for my phone. Across the continental United States. I'm now broadcasting you from a secret basement in my in-laws' home in Seattle, Washington, because, family. And joining me today is Lisa Maguire, who will be our special guest on Thursday. Now, a secret insider tip right here is that because I am broadcasting from my in-laws' basement, I don't have any visibility as it happens. I just checked with my interface. Well, maybe one little stupid trick to see all of you coming in on the chat. So guess what, Lisa? I may have to have you spot people as they're coming in
Okay.
because last
Mary
minute warning,
Marshall
I
just
can't.
joined us.
There you see.
Hi, Mary.
Hello,
Dr. Mary is
Dr.
here.
Mary Marshall. We were just, oh, hi, maybe I can. I've got a new thing that says it's like too hard. Nope, it won't let me do it. Don't try this at home, kids. I was trying to
And
watch
Linda
it on.
Hines just joined us.
Hello, Linda. How about that? So I know who has been online because I've been chatting with both of you in comments to posts. It's one of the fun things about here we are all minding our own business on a weekend, and we can see each other as we comment and connect on whatever the topic of the day is, and usually somehow surrounding our families. And Lisa joins us as a bona fide academic who has taken the time not only to be a bona fide academic, but explore her own family stories, as we have all learned and enjoyed watching the wonderful series that you've written, kind of leveling up. Certainly speaking for myself, leveling up on the quality and structure and rigor of the writing. So on Thursday, you're diving into a topic that you brought up of microhistory. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about what that's all about. And
Sure. When I was a graduate student, I was very enamored of this particular kind of history in which you take a very small subject and you use that small subject to illuminate broader currents of history. And the sort of seminal work of this approach was written by a man named Carlo Ginzburg, who wrote a book called The Cheese and the Worms, which was about the heresy trial of a 16th century Italian miller. And in the trial documents, the inquisitors really examined his library, and from the library of this man, Carlo Ginzburg shows to us this entire world of the early literate people, the people who first started reading widely, had access to books, and this is 16th century Europe, and really revolutionized the way we think about, the mentalities, the history of mentalities in this period. And it was from a very small, like a very obscure person who happened to have a written record that he could investigate, and he could pull this out of and analyze this. And I thought, wow, this is exactly what family history can do. That you can study the history of your ancestors and do your genealogy, but what an opportunity to really flip the lens around and say, what does the experience of our ancestors tell us about the broader currents of history? What can we learn from this? Because, they're oftentimes not people who have history books written about them, right? So I just thought it was such an exciting way to think about family history.
yeah, I love that model or metaphor of flip the lens.
Mm.
Because, you have the macro and micro lens, and looking at, here I am, I'm looking at the bookshelves behind you, ironically, and which are unique, by the way, just because it's so narrow and you don't have the shelf to dust. Very nice touch. But
Oh,
it's
that's my husband's invention. These are 1x1s with carriage bolts. No dusting.
Genius. Genius. But and in that story of the worms and the cheese, it's this idea because you have these documents, because you
Mhm.
have this record, because it was a structured case, right? That
Mhm.
you have the
Mhm.
investigation, that you have
Mhm.
all of this detail of that moment in time, like a photograph. I mean, a photograph is just a visual
Mhm.
record of a moment in time, but you have this moment in time captured like,
Mhm.
a mosquito in amber, to catch and then to be exploring. Now, what of us as mere mortals? I mean, we're not academics, we're not scholars, we're just regular folks with
Mhm.
have records of our regular
Mhm.
family. How do we know we're doing it right?
I just wanted to say, first of all, Anne Falsier joined, and
Oh,
Saf Schluger and Kathy Stone. So hello to them.
thank
Um,
you.
and yes, this is the thing that I find so exciting also about family history, which is that we can be historians, we can write history without having to have the doctorate, without having to have all the credentials and the you know uh, all the gatekeeping around history up until now. Like, I think there's so much information out there. It's really an opportunity for us to take those fragments, those artifacts that we have. It could be an object, it could be a document, it could be a photograph, it could be any of these things, and really ask historical questions of it. And what do I mean by that? Asking a historical question is, rather than thinking about your family as something that history doesn't just happen to your family. It's not just context. Your family is an active participant in history. And the opportunity here is to really say, you know, what can I derive from this artifact, from this document, from any record we have of our family, to say, how did they shape history? What is it about my family's experience that can teach us about the broader world? And that could be something like, it could challenge our received notions of the history of a community or a country or what have you. I mean, um, some of the things that I've written about my family, I feel like I've also just like rediscovered or illuminated things that people didn't really know, that people don't commonly know. Like, you have to be a really subject matter expert to know about some of these things. And writing about my family is sort of bringing this all back to more broader understanding for people. So I think it's an opportunity to be an historian, and I don't think you have to be a PhD in history to do it. I think you just have to sort of use the tools and concepts of microhistory and apply them.
The so many of us can trace family back. Going to the 19th century is not that far back. Great great grandparents,
Mhm.
19th, early 19th century. And during that tremendous period of transformation of in the Industrial
Mhm.
Revolution, of these incredible periods of migrations, of incredible, devastating, traumatic wars, and other kinds of experiences that many of us can very easily just tick off that affected our
Mhm.
families. How do we how do we know how to ask those questions? Can you just give us a list of what the 10 questions are?
Well, it depends on the subject, right? So I guess a good example, I guess I could give you an example of some of the history that I ended up being able to write based upon my family history. Maybe that's a good place to start. So, um, a lot of us have had the opportunity to visit Quebec City as tourists and have seen this lovely old world capital, or capital of the province, with this beautiful citadel and these cobblestone streets. It's very charming, and it's very, very French. And people always say, oh, it's like going to Paris, it's like going to France, it's like, it feels like I'm not in North America. It's a very French city, but it wasn't always a French city. It used to be an Irish city, and people don't really know that. It's was a city that in the 19th century was almost 40% Irish, and the Irish controlled it. They controlled it economically. And why? Because they controlled the port and they controlled the shipyards. And people don't realize also that the wealth of Quebec City came from timber, and the timber that was floated down the St. Lawrence River and packed onto ships that were then fed the British Empire. And when I started researching my family and learning that they were stevedores in the ports of Quebec City, I don't think I appreciated how transforming their part of um, that that economic phenomenon. I mean, it was a completely transforming experience for North America to basically create this massive industry that built the British Navy, that built the British Empire. And wood as far away as Kentucky was brought through Quebec City and floated down on these logs, these giant log rafts. And it's hard for us to imagine today the massive amount of wood that came through that port. And it was all managed by just a handful of stevedores who, and of
Wow.
course, stevedoring, when I was a kid, or when I was, before I started learning a bit more about this, I thought a stevedore was the dock worker, and in fact,
Yeah.
no, a stevedore is actually the person who stands at the docks and does all the logistics. That person controls the measure, the count, who has to manage the gang of workers, and has to be able to do this absolutely, efficiently and quickly, and just cost effectively. And
Yeah.
so there's only a handful of people who did this work. And so my family, I've come from 3 generations of stevedores in Quebec City, and I knew that they were stevedores. I didn't know anything though about what they accomplished. And they were totally ordinary people. Like, they were just regular people. There's no books written about them. They never made their mark on the world in anything, but yet they fed this timber to, across the British Empire. It's just kind of amazing. So that's the kind of opportunity I think there is for so many people to learn about their
Yeah.
families and see what
Yeah.
they accomplished.
Yeah. I think here in Ron Chan, who is a writer that we've seen many
Hmm.
times on Projectkin, a friend of mine, he comes from third or fourth generation Chinese American in
Hmm.
San Francisco. To think about that generation, count, count, count. Oh my goodness. His,
Hmm.
great grandfather's generation were the Chinese who were building the railroad. And the stories that then implied of what those generations were doing and what that meant to the American laws with respect to Chinese, as well as the development all of California, is so young.
Hmm.
It's ridiculously young
Hmm.
as far as economics are concerned, and so
Hmm.
on. And even things like, again, shipping and how shipping has affected that market. You mentioned,
Hmm.
giant logs moving through. I've been visiting Portland, and now I'm up in Seattle, and to see where the timber industries
Hmm.
affected, as they were related to the rivers. And
Hmm.
Astoria in Oregon is right on
Hmm.
the edge of the Washington border, which is why, because of fur trading, the same Astoria Hotel Astoria, and the same kinds of timber and so on, and how that affected stuff. I don't have family in any of those, but I actually got curious about that after reading your stories about Quebec
Right.
City, and that kind of who knew Irish.
Hmm.
Each
But I
of
think we all
these.
have these
Yeah,
stories.
we
That's
do.
the thing that's so extraordinary. Like, the way, and when I see so much of what is produced on Substack from our family history and genealogy community, it's just astonishing to see, like, all these families that had contributed so much and did so many interesting things, and they're not necessarily kings and generals. They're very ordinary people, and I find that so interesting.
I think the fault lies in this expectation that it is the kings and generals that are making
Hmm.
history. It may be the history that
Hmm.
has been
Hmm.
documented in the past, but
Hmm.
they actually don't move the needle compared to what real people do in moving a GDP, that move
Exactly.
an
Exactly.
economy, that move the goods and
Hmm.
services, that
Hmm.
transform a population, or, you know, transform a technology that is, recreates an industry, the invention of the spur, the invention of a
Hmm.
different kinds of saddles that
Hmm.
transform how people
Hmm.
can move, and all the way
Hmm.
up to Calistoga wagons and steam engines and telegraphs and all of the other
Hmm.
kinds of technology and we've lived through in the last our generation
Hmm.
has lived through this unbelievable transformation in
Hmm.
time. I had a telex machine in our house as a kid growing up. That was unusual, yes, but it was the nature of
Hmm.
the business my parents were in. But,
Hmm.
to literally go from a telex to fiber connections is kind of
Hmm.
breathtaking. And, it's already, I'm looking back into old family photos of my childhood to see what the technology doodads were in the background
Hmm.
and, what business people were in. Now, hey, if you have comments and questions, feel free to drop them in there because fortunately, Lisa can see them. I can't. Sorry. It's not
Yeah,
even
and I see a
telling me
bunch
you
of
have your
folks joined, and I'm sorry
Yes.
I wasn't able to. I was too busy
Yeah. You're
mouthing
too
off, so I
gracious to
wasn't
not
able to.
interrupt me.
Or I
Who
was
do we
talking.
have here?
So it's Diane from Bowerberg,
Oh, hello,
BFH
Diane, all the way in from Australia.
Bowerberg.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Hank Isles. Welcome, welcome. But seriously, if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in because we're just going to keep on going. I'm so excited about, I'm always excited to bring in academic perspectives that we aren't otherwise hearing in some of the ordinary research. And one of the things that you commented, I think, is something that just can't be repeated enough. And that is the idea that you don't have to have academic
Mhm.
chops. You don't have to
Mhm.
have academic structure and footnoting and peer reviewing to write it down, to get it down, to
Mhm.
actually, in fact, make a meaningful contribution. Tell us a little bit more about that and the kinds of
Yeah.
forms that are helpful.
So one of the things I really like about Substack is that you have the opportunity to experiment. So I've been writing different kinds of pieces on Substack. Some of them are like memoir or stories that my mother told me about my family, or some of the more creative nonfiction, like I did a whole series on the Mohans of Beaubassin, where I kind of invented conversations and such, just to sort of bring it alive. So you can experiment with all these different kinds of writing, but you can also borrow the tools and concepts of microhistory and apply them to these different kinds of writing. So I'm particularly uh, drawn to people who who have a very big palette, and they draw from different tools and concepts. Like I'm thinking of, for example, David Shaw, who writes about this. He's written a number of different pieces, but the ones about where he's describing the restoration of this Union Cemetery in Randolph County, he's drawing on anthropology and economics and even botany. Like he did one piece about the cemetery
Flowers.
as a micro as an ecosystem. I find that just amazing. So there's so many academic concepts and, as I said, and tools that you can apply and enrich your family history. You don't have to necessarily flip the lens around and think about your family as microhistory. You can also use those tools to enhance your family history storytelling,
What I love
which is
about that, and what
interesting.
I think I just heard is that, take someone like David, whom I believe is a anthropologist by training. I could be
Mhm.
wrong. I think that's the
I think he's an
case.
archaeologist, actually.
Archaeologist,
Yeah,
archaeologist.
and so you see that come through as well
Yeah.
in his writing.
So someone, we have a lot of people commenting, for example, about family recipes and food culture, food
Mhm.
history.
Mhm.
So I think what you're saying is that if there is a if there's an expertise that is who you are, that is a perspective that you bring to
Mhm.
something, taking that toolkit and applying it to the
Mhm.
questions relating to the people and the time and the place and the moment
Mhm.
can be illuminating in ways that are
Mhm.
surprising. Is that what you mean?
I think so. I think, I would encourage people to read widely on Substack and see the different ways that people approach family storytelling, because it's not just, history is my groove, but there are other ways of writing as well. Um, but I think what the piece that I wrote this week, and what I hope we can talk about more on Thursday, is really to invite people to try and use the concepts of microhistory, because I think you'll find it very rewarding if you take that step back. You don't flip the lens around, but you pull it back and you sort of ask yourself, you know, what did my family contribute, and what does my family's experience tell us that we didn't know before? And as I wrote in my piece, like, the more ordinary your family is, the more likely you're going to discover something that no one knew before.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful because too often I think we go into this saying, "Well, I'm going to go get all the names and dates and births and deaths and marriage dates and all the relationships, and then I am done." Or
Hmm.
the um but I'm not married. I'm not related to the Queen. But I'm not, I don't have any famous people in my tree. I'm
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
And actually, my feeling is that if that's the way you feel about it, then you probably are done. But if you're going into this and discovering pieces that are just so fascinating, but you think
Mhm.
there's something wrong with you because you're not making forward
Mhm.
progress because you're so interested in the things that you're doing, you're probably doing it right. And
Exactly.
because you're interested. And
Mhm.
what you are capturing is going to be an artifact for the next path to follow you
Mhm.
because you're creating something that has dug into a period of history. And even if you don't get the citations according to some specific format,
Mhm.
just keep going. If that's what
Mhm.
it takes to that you have enough of a record that you can follow, keep
Mhm.
going
Mhm.
and do the thing that is what is curious to you and the finding of and exploring of the stories.
Mhm.
As I said, I've here visiting family and to see my in-laws in their late 90s talking about legacy is what's
Mhm.
happening right upstairs right now, and really a family that left China during the Sino-Japanese War
Mhm.
and the extraordinary transformation in world history that happened through
Mhm.
that moment in time, and what this
Mhm.
family experienced. An ordinary family. It just happened to have been there at that time. And
Mhm.
I can't document all of them, but I know one,
Mhm.
and one little bit of a story. And that's each of these migration stories, each of these clashes, culture clashes,
Mhm.
transformations of industries, uh, and economic transformations that caused.
Mhm.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Too bad it can't change the present world, but we're getting there. Take things one step at a time. Well, I'm really looking forward to Thursday. Any other questions we should address here before we wrap? We good?
I don't think so. I don't there's a comment that I'm so glad was able to join today. I'm not sure who left that comment though. I'm sorry, I'm not a very good moderator. I really
You know what?
haven't really
You've got a
figured it
day
out yet.
job. It's okay. That's okay. We've got this, and I kind of I love this spirit of experimentation on Substack. You put it beautifully there. And I love the spirit of all of you as if a community of stepping in there and joining in the, I don't know, let's find out what happens. Because that's where we are in time right now. And it takes that extra effort of pushing forward to try new things and to make it
Absolutely.
work. And it sometimes is a little bit uncomfortable in the same way that trying that new elliptical thing is a little bit uncomfortable on the legs the next day.
Well, one of the
uh,
things I think we can talk about on Thursday is there's so many wonderful live examples of people in the family history writing community who are actually, I think, writing really great microhistory that are so you've got a lot of examples out there that we can talk about.
Yay. So I look forward to that. And as all of you know, I go out of my way to catch all those names and references because that's great stuff. And you know what? I know I don't catch them all. So that's what the comments are for. So I look forward to your feedback and comments after this as well, because that continues to feed each other as we learn from that. That's how we get to know all of you as a community as a whole, and we continue to learn from each other and pass this forward. So a little insider tip, if you didn't already know, this will go out as a video just as soon as it's done. And I usually make a quick comment to let anybody who joins late know I'm going to be refreshing it with more notes and things. And you can usually tell how by the number of notes included whether I've been there or not, to get it done. And most of all, this one is, of course, a Substack Live. Our next session is actually recorded in Zoom. We do that so that all of you can join in. You can share slides or anything other media if you want, but most of all of you can join as participants and engage in the conversation as well. You do, however, need to register for a Zoom link, and you can find the link off the top of my head. You can get there by going to projectkin.org/events. and follow the dates to August 7th. Depending, unless of course you're Diane in Australia and everybody in Australia, New Zealand, in which case it will be the 8th. Uh, uh, Early in the morning. It's our Pacific time, though Lisa is in Connecticut. And the secret reason for that is she really has a day job. And she's slipping this in. We're in all to get all of that done. And with that, I want to thank you all, and we will see you on Thursday. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye. Talk to you soon.